Well, welcome everybody to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross, where we are your resource for education, connection, and collaboration. And today we are talking about resilience redefined with our guest, Shana Francesca. Shana is joining us today to share her extraordinary story of resilience and transformation. Born into an abusive household and raised within an evangelical, that's a big word. Anyway, Thank you. Evangelical Christian Cult. Shana faced the harsh realities of harmful and unethical leadership from a young age. So through her experiences, she's discovered the transformative power of curiosity, respect, and accountability in fostering ethical relationships and leadership. Shana, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, and to me, it's an amazing story, and it's just proof that, we can change our outcome and everything. So can you share with us a bit about your upbringing and how it shaped your perspective on leadership and life?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said in the bio, in the opening, I was born into an abusive household and raised inside of an evangelical Christian cult. And when you grow up in those environments, there's no space for you to be who you are. There's no space for you to even discover who you might want to be. There's no, in a high control environment, there can't be uniqueness, individuality. There has to be obedience. There must be subjugation. And you must strip people of their humanity. And you must get them to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And so there's a heavy amount of propaganda. And also then once you are stripped of your own humanity, it's much easier to manipulate you and to get you to strip others of their humanity as well, right? It becomes this downward spiral. And it's a very dangerous place to be. And there was always, questions in my mind because I was suffering greatly and, seeing the lack of accountability from the leadership around me, from my parents, my father in particular, from all of these directions, these people who are supposed to be the authority over me were consistently causing me harm and hiding and protecting the people who were harming me, either themselves or other people or both. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to make it long term. Like as a human being, this was not living. This was something like dying. And it felt like that every day. And so I knew I couldn't stay. And so I left at 26 fully. And that was the beginning of my journey to who I am now, right? But it takes a long time. At 26, that was 14 years ago for people who are listening. That was a very long time ago. And it took a really long time to become who I am today. And it'll take me an even longer time to continue to deconstruct a lot of the programming and the propaganda that was, fed to me in my formative years. So I would say that actually predominantly the most deconstruction, like the most profound deconstruction, like I literally just let myself sit with it in the last 5 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, and that's pretty amazing because you're essentially born and raised in that environment, so I would think normally when you're that way to most people, they would think that that's the way life is supposed to be. But the fact is that you actually realized that it wasn't healthy and things different, which to me seems to be a challenge in itself.
Yeah, there was like a dichotomy in the beginning. Like I still in some way believed, okay, this is the way the world is supposed to be, but apparently I'm not supposed to be a part of that. Right? I'm clearly in some way different than I'm supposed to be, but I'm committed to just figuring out how I can be me because so there was still this dichotomy. There was still like cognitive dissonance very deeply held inside of my being in order to hold two things that are absolutely not true at the same time and forcing them to be true at the same time. And it took me an even longer time to realize that we as human beings live in the gray, and anybody who's trying to force you into a binary, into black and white, things only exist in these two categories or very specific definitions of how we have to show up in the world. They have very specific agendas, and it's used to manipulate and to cause harm and to not be held accountable for that harm.
Yeah. And a very controlling situation too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I commend you for being able to break through and take that change. Cause like you said, it seems, 14 years is a long time, but is it really long? I mean, you spent 26 years. That's a lot to undo,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, that has shocked me the most is like you come out and like there's so much in our society and our culture around healing yourself and being on a journey, and I think social media makes it feel like we've got to pretend we're further along than we are. We're like, I'm healed, I'm healing, I'm and there's people talk about like taking quantum leaps in their journey. There's no such thing. There's no way to hack your healing. There's no way to do that. You have to just put one foot in front of the other, because everything that you deconstruct and you heal becomes the foundation for the next thing. And they just build on top of one another. If you try to hack that healing, what are you building on top of? There's no foundation to that, right? And I also tell people, my trauma happened in isolation. Even though I was surrounded by people who were pretending to be community, they weren't actually showing up as community. I have a very specific definition of what community actually is. They were in proximity to me, but they were not an actual ethical relationship with me, right?
Right.
And when I left those environments and actually started understanding what healthy relationship is and what it requires, that became a very different thing. I actually had community around me. I actually had support, and I had people to hold me accountable. And then my healing really could start. And that took time. That's why I say to people, like, it takes time. You don't just leave those environments and suddenly understand everything. And suddenly this whole ideology shatters. You don't even know what's real and what's not. You don't even know how to determine what aligns with yourself or not, because you don't even know who you are outside of the programming and ideology. There's so many layers. There's no way to hack your healing.
Yeah. And a lot of us, even if we haven't been through something that extreme, often don't know who we are because we're busy going through the motions and doing what we think we're supposed to do. We would all love to have that magical wand to wave to say, whoop, this is gone and it's changed. But you can't do years of damage and expect it to go away tomorrow.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I went on the journey that I did, is because I realized that there were reflections of the environments that I grew up in our society at large. I realized that very few people seemed to actually know what healthy relationship was. They were fumbling around trying to figure it out. But most of us, I think, were taught to live in proximity with one another. We weren't actually taught to live in how to live in relationship with one another. And those two things are not even close to the same.
No, they're not. And you mentioned community. And like you said, you have a very different definition of community. So what is your definition of community?
So there's this beautiful, so I believe that community functions as an ecosystem. And when I realized that, when I was able to sit with that, and that's not something that just like came to me out of thin air. I have been reading the works of incredible people like James Baldwin and Maya Angelou and Audre Lorde and all these incredible human beings. And so when my mind made the connection and I finally realized, okay, wait, being in community with one another is an ecosystem, right? Then I sought to define what an ecosystem is. And I looked up the definition in like Merriam-Webster's and dictionary.com, and I was like, these are terrible. These are absolutely terrible. And then I just kept searching, and I found National Geographic's definition of an ecosystem, and it is spectacular. So National Geographic's definition of an ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms work together along with the weather and the landscape to form a bubble of life. And I said, oh, that's it. That's what an ecosystem is. That's what real community is. Ethical community is a bubble of life. Because then when we think about it, All life on this planet exists because of ecosystems, overlapping, interdependent ecosystems. So what in the world would make us think that our lives should then not exist that way as well?
True. True.
We
Because
are nature.
what we do affects them. What they do affects us. It's just
Correct.
it's a whole big circle that we often don't look at.
Correct. We are nature. We are not separate from it. We are not in charge of it. We are part of it. We are meant to be stewards of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that. I think some of us maybe never even, we knew it as children, but we've forgotten it, right? And so when we recognize that, we are meant to operate the way that nature operates, the way that all life operates, because we are alive. Even our bodies are ecosystems, right? Mm-hmm. There's something like 60 trillion microbes inside of our body. Like, it's crazy. Our bodies are just full of living organisms that help to keep us alive. And when they die off, we suffer, right? Think about why we take probiotics and all of these things. That's to cultivate literal life inside of your stomach. Bacteria that's alive inside of you that helps keep you alive, right? It's insane. And we don't think about it that way, though, right? Mm-hmm. And because we don't, it causes us harm. And so when I sat down and I thought about, okay, so what does that mean in terms of who we are and in terms of how we show up as human beings, as leaders, I started to recognize that when we're talking about like leadership specifically, and that applies to each and every one of us, because no matter who you are a leader in some way, shape, or form, even if it's only of your own life, right? That leadership functions as the weather and the landscape, right? So when we look at the way that, like, say, rain works, right? Our weather patterns and our weather systems. This is how it's supposed to work, right? The soil is alive, full of organisms that then take in that water, feed it into the mycorrhizal network. It's like what connects all of fungus, right? Mm-hmm. Fungus is the fruiting body of mycorrhizal network, but all that mycelium connect underground and share resources, water, carbon, with all the plants around, right? It's the internet of the plant world. And it shares it with all these living beings, right? And then water goes up through the roots of all of these plants. And then it's absorbed into the air and brought back up into the sky. And that creates rain, right? Well, that's interrupted when we do things like spray the ground with herbicides and pesticides that turn the soil into dirt. It literally kills off that ecosystem, right? So when we start to think about leadership, we have to recognize the great responsibility in being the landscape, because all of the living beings feed off of those plants. They breathe because of those plants, right? All of these things that we tap into. So when we start to recognize our interconnectedness, right, now we start to understand how important it is for us to show up in community and how powerful we are and how we cannot abdicate that. We cannot pretend it's someone else's responsibility to mitigate the impact of our actions. It's ours.
Right. That's true.
Individually, but collectively, right?
Yeah. And everything really has a purpose. We just don't often take time to even think about it that way or dive in because we're just so busy.
Exactly.
Caught up in our own little world.
Yeah. And the world is designed that way on purpose. So we don't pay attention, because then we would hold corporations who cause harm to the world around us. We would hold them responsible for the harm they cause. But since we're not aware of how connected everything is and how connected we are to the living world around us, it's easier for them to get away with it because we don't know. It's over there.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect us, right? But it does.
It does. It really does. Yeah. So you are the founder and CEO of Concinnate LLC.
Yeah.
What inspired you to start that, and how does your personal journey influence the work you do?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So my very first business was an interior design business. That's all I did. And I was having these conversations with people about how they want to show up in the world and the powerful things that they want to do and the way that we could facilitate that through creating physical environments that would help them to foster community around themselves, right? Like there was one client I remember where I walked into his condo and I was like, well, you said you want to gather with people, but that sofa is like blocking the entire pathway. Nobody can even get into that seating area. And we would just move around the furniture, and like 2 weeks later he had a dinner party, right? So those were really, interior design has a tremendous impact on our mental health However, at some point I realized it was a significantly limiting medium. I could only work with so many clients. Only there was so much education going on my part, so much coaching of my clients, and I really wanted one-on-one work and really be able to have these larger conversations with people. And I was asked to get into speaking engagements. And it was around that time I started realizing, oh, you know, this research you've been doing for a decade on relationships and leadership? Well, hello, it's really impactful the way that you've distilled this information.
Mm-hmm.
And people really need to hear it. And people kept asking me to hear it. And so it really became of like, you know, I'm having these conversations with people. They're like, you need to get. I had realized like I wanted to shift the business and I wanted it to be more about, I was calling it life design. I wanted to be more about a holistic approach, without being too woo-woo about it. But
I will just tell you there is nothing wrong with woo-woo, and I think more and more people are finding that out because everybody's got that woo-woo label. But I'm like, there's a lot to be said about woo-woo. So
there is, absolutely. But I don't want to be too woo-woo about it. I wasn't at the time either. I just, you know, anyway, so, you know, I was talking about it as like life design. And then I realized, again, I'm still limiting myself. And I finally I decided to essentially rebrand my business, but really I filed another LLC. It was easier that way. And so I really just started another, business.
If you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure plenty of us are familiar with that. We have a few.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it's sometimes just easier to like just start a new one. And so I did. I filed for a new LLC, and it took me 1.5 years to find the name Concinnate. It's a real word. It's a word that we don't use anymore. And I'll look it up so I can read the definition because I feel like you're probably going to ask that.
Go ahead, because I did actually look it up myself, and I wanted to make sure because according to my spell checker, it's not spelled correctly. So yeah, I had to look it up. It's like
they want it to be like they want it to be Cincinnati or something else because it's a word we don't use anymore. So it's not in our spell checker. So it means to arrange or blend together skillfully as parts or elements put together in a harmonious, precisely appropriate, or elegant manner. And I knew that's what I wanted to facilitate in the world. And that's what I had been facilitating with interior design, but that was no longer an effective medium. And I wanted to have these larger conversations. So bringing in that name, it kind of became this umbrella for what can we do? What is it that I can do that facilitates in this world in a more beautiful, impactful way? Oh yeah, there's more than a decade worth of research that you could bring to the world. And so I did. And so that's how, you know, now I'm a public speaker. I facilitate workshops and do consulting work. And that's the mainstay of what I do now. Which I think I always wished it to be that and I said, you know, I think I was always going to get to this work. I just had to give myself permission to let go of interior design.
Yeah. It's amazing how things kind of come into play or fall into place and you wind up taking a path you might have never thought years ago that you would ever even be on.
Exactly. Yeah. If I hadn't started my interior design business, I don't know if I would have known how to do this. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I would have had the confidence. It's so much work running a business. Oh dear Lord.
And you'll define, I know you'll define intentional living for us, but really your interior design is really, I think, kind of part of that because people don't put a lot of thought into that. Some people, maybe it might be more women than guys. Sometimes it's been more men, but your environment that you're in actually affects you, your moods, what you do. And there's actually a lot more play to that. It's not just paint on a wall or, you know, a decoration or an arrangement. And I don't think people often look at it that way.
Yeah. But I mean, I think to your point, I think people don't recognize how much the paint on the wall actually affects their emotional and like health. There's been studies that came out. There's one in 2019 that came out in Europe. It's called the happiness study, if I remember correctly, about our interior environments and the impact on our mental health. And, you know, it's when I say this to people, your physical environment can be and I still do some interior design consulting. I just don't get in the weeds the way that I used to.
Right.
Because it takes way too much time and it's easier for me to say, okay, here's the design. Now go hire people to, you know, implement. because I used to do all the project management and everything, all of that. I don't have time for that anymore. But, when we realize that our physical environments, especially like our bedroom, it's the very first thing you open your eyes to in the morning. It's the last thing that you see before you close your eyes at night. That space is meant to be a reflection of who you are, how you want to show up in the world. It's meant to remind you of those things in those moments that are super key, right? The first thing you see in the morning, that's going to set your mood for the entire day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's deeply impactful work. And I still take on design clients here and there, but it's much more strategic. I have to really like them and really be interested in the project, because because I can have these conversations with people and they can go out and hire, incredible interior designers, or they can, decide to do the work themselves, or they can hire me and I can come up with the design and we can figure out how to work together. But ultimately, just the awareness is so extremely important, right? Because so often people are like, oh, they'll go through pictures on Pinterest or, Instagram, and they find something they like and they're like, okay, I'm going to design my home like this. No, no, please don't do that. That's someone else's home. That's not
Yeah.
your home. That has no reflection on who you are. There should always be this customization of who you are and how you want to show up in the world, and your lived experience should be represented in that space. It's a vision board for your life. Don't abandon the power of that. And so, obviously I still love it. I did it for 17 years. But I also really love getting on stages and having these powerful conversations with people, because that shift in mindset is the first step. It's the most important part.
Yeah. And that's kind of like when I had a gentleman help me with, the new thumbnails and loading, and he sent me a couple of things. I'm like, okay, I love it, except for the gray. Gray just reminds me of institutional gray. It's depressing. I'm like, that is like not me. He says, got it. I'm like, that's. I've seen people paint buildings gray cars. I'm like, and if it makes them happy, great. To me, it's just like, why?
To me, it's stripping us of all the things that make us unique, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there are some beautiful grays that have beautiful tints and hues in them, but I think there was this significant trend that I felt creeping up for a long time of people designing their homes in a way, thinking about who was going to own them next, about their resale values, about guests, about this, that, and the other. And I'm like, where in the conversation does what you want to show up? And if you don't know the answer to that question, if you don't know what you want, if you don't know how you want to show up in your own home, that's the thing we need to be talking about, not what color gray to put on your walls, right? Because that gray, that connection to gray and white and indescript might be a reflection of how you're feeling about yourself. Not that you are those things, but you're feeling like you have to become those things in order to survive, to be accepted, so on and so forth. And what if we just revived the fact that you are colorful and beautiful and meant to explode into this world?
It's bad enough we have areas with HOAs that say you have this or this. It has to be one of these colors. I'm like, this is my home, my investment. Well, I know we have a lot more to talk about intentional living and community and empowerment, but we need to take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back.
Hey, we got soul. Oh yeah, we got soul.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM Metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete,
relief for PTSD, anxiety, pain, insomnia, and many other ailments. Introducing Vibe, the world's only pocket PEMF device. You place it in your pocket while cooking, cleaning, relaxing, watching TV, sitting at your computer, reading, or walking. Self-contained standalone device. No drugs. No other phone or Bluetooth connections required. No monthly subscription fees. No apps to download. No Bozone. Come join the revolution.
So we were talking about intentional living and life design. How would you define those?
When we talk about designing your life, right, I think at the foundation of all of it is understanding relationship. And we have to have a strong relationship with ourselves and be continually invested in expanding our relationship and our understanding with the world around us in order to better understand ourselves. Because I don't know about you, but the more I've learned about the world around me, the more I've discovered what's possible in the world and discovered where I might be able to actually fit better and understand like what's even possible, like who I could even possibly become and the kind of impact I could make. And so, you know, we need to have a relationship to ourselves and to our learning and to our growth, right? And that's where it starts. That's how we become intentional, by educating ourselves consistently. But we need to have a relationship with how we educate ourselves and the kind of information we're taking in and be intentional about that, right? And so they all kind of just like circle back to one another.
Right.
So I would define it as, first, by understanding what ethical relationship is and what it requires, which is, I posit in my work, it requires curiosity, respect, and accountability. And I define those things very, very specifically, right? And they all are meant to balance each other out, right? Because curiosity without respect is intrusive, and respect without curiosity is uneducated, and without accountability, it's unethical, right?
Right.
So I define accountability as taking responsibility for the impact of our actions on the people and the lives that have and are being impacted. And then the part of the responsibility part is to get curious, to learn more and do better, right? And so when we work through all of these things together, right, inside of ourselves, right, this is how I'm going to show up in the world, as someone who's curious, balanced out by respect, who takes accountability, who practices accountability, right?
Right.
Now I've started to alter the way I show up in the world and who and what can connect to me and is drawn to me, right?
Right.
And in that moment, now I'm expanding my understanding of myself and the world around me. And now I can become more intentional about my actions, right? I can be like, okay, now this is who I want to become, right? And I have a better understanding of that and my impact. So now I can take more informed steps towards becoming that person, right? And so it's an ecosystem, right? It's not
Right.
do this, then this, then this, then this. It's take small steps. This is not about doing it all at once and about being perfect. Absolutely not. That's where accountability's in there,
Yep.
right? It's in there because we can never be perfect.
Nope.
And we're not meant to be. And you learn the most from your mistakes and your failures. I learn the most from my mistakes and failures, right?
I do as well.
Yeah, but it's about taking little steps. Like one of the things I recommend to people to do to start cultivating your curiosity is taking a curiosity walk specifically. Now, I don't know about you, but it's 100 degrees outside here in South Jersey. So right now I will not be going outside, but in the mornings when I go for a walk, I often am drawn to find something I either don't know anything about or I have quote unquote known about my whole life and learned 3 new things about it. It could be a dog I run into. It could be a dandelion, poison ivy, a fuzzy caterpillar, earthworms. It could be a variety of things that feel bluebirds, cardinals, whatever it is. I'm picking something that I can learn 3 new facts about. And here's the thing. It has continually taught me how much of my life I've lived in proximity to the world around me instead of relationship, because I don't even understand. I think I know, but I don't actually know as much as I think I know. And it's really powerful to get to that place in your life and to begin to practice getting curious and recognizing that there's always something more for us to learn, that if we stay in that place of curiosity, the world becomes a beautiful place to discover rather than a place that to be afraid of or to feel like you need to dominate and control, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like you can take the same path to work or walk the same path. But like you said, if you're curious and you're open, you will probably see things that you've never even really seen before.
Yes.
And recognize it, because we just kind of get that, tunnel vision and we just go.
Yeah, let me just get it done. Let me just get through it. And I get it. I really do, because our lives are insanely busy, insanely scheduled. But we have to be more intentional, to be better connected to ourselves, to actually experience joy and connection with the world around us. We are going to have to take the time to be intentional enough to actually observe the world around us, to get really curious about the things that feel mundane. I have learned incredible things that are in my speeches, by the way, about dandelions and poison ivy and beavers in Tierra del Fuego, which is an archipelago off the end of Argentina, and a whole variety of things that I have learned about the living world around me that just blows me away at the way that I see how connected everything is and how nature is a beautiful and incredible, powerful teacher.
I like sitting outside and listening to the birds, and they all have like a different sound, and trying to identify and connect the sound with that type of bird and figure out more about them, because they're really fascinating. It's not just a tweet. They like all have different sounds, and it's incredible when you take the time to just enjoy that and have it going.
Yeah, I that's when I learned the difference between an owl and a mourning dove, because they, in my mind, because of the way that owls are represented, like that sound, I always thought that like the mourning doves were owls, but I never saw any owls. I was just like, and I didn't think owls came out in the daytime, but okay, I can hear them. And no, then I discovered, probably in my teens, oh, well, wait, that's a mourning dove. We don't have that many owls around here. It's a different kind of bird entirely.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we were talking earlier about community. So how would you say community empowerment played a role in individual growth and development for you, in your experience?
Oh gosh, it was everything, right? Community for me isn't just physical, right? There is a community of incredible humans that live inside of my head, not like in a crazy way, but I've read their books, I've digested their work, I've, and their voices, right? Their knowledge, their wisdom, has been absorbed into who I am and becomes this chorus of, community of educators, of people who have educated me that are part of who I am. And then there's people in the actual physical world that are part of my network, that are friendships, that are people I can say, hey, I've got this new speech. And like, I think it's incredible, but also like, am I pushing this part too far or not? Like, would you all come together and I'll bring some wine and some snacks, and would you listen to my speech, right? And give me some feedback. And by the way, it's a diverse array of human beings, right?
Right.
And so that I'm actually being held accountable for what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, and making sure that I'm, using the most powerful and the most impactful and the most respectful language that I possibly can. So there's all of these ways. And being a sole entrepreneur, I used to have like 7 people working for me when I was doing interior design work. But as of this year, it's like just back to just me. And I contract things out, but I don't have people working for me anymore, at least at this moment. So being a sole entrepreneur, you need a chorus of people around you to support you, right? Who do incredible things that can like take stuff off your plate, because you're so busy and so consumed by so many things. So, community can be anything from like, hey, we all have kids around the same age who are in the same classes, who go to the same school. Like, can we, carpool, or can we, make meals together? And there was one group of families I heard about. Somebody was telling a story about this, like, group of 5 families who got together and decided each one was going to be responsible to make dinner one night a week.
Okay. Yeah.
And then distribute it. So all of them regained 4 nights of the week back of time that they weren't having to make dinner. Right? And that's a big,
That's a pretty tight knit community when you do that. Yeah.
but also that's huge, right? That's
Yeah.
a huge thing. And for us to like start exploring those kinds of possibilities for ourselves, to be able to reclaim our time together, those are powerful things that start to shift the way we can show up in the world and the way that everybody around us can show up in the world too. Reclaiming, not having to do, figure out the meal, do the grocery shopping for, cook and clean, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
4 nights a week. That's crazy great. I don't even have kids, and I'm like, that's amazing. Can I get some single ladies who want to do that with me?
Can I adopt a kid so I can be part of that?
Right.
Join the group. Yeah. No, that is amazing. So what advice would you give to someone that's looking to integrate intentionality into their daily life and decision-making process?
I would say for sure, start with curiosity. Start learning, and not just about the things that are directly connected to what you already know in the world or your business, because especially as entrepreneurs, and get kind of hyper focused on like personal development, business development, sale, all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if you were to learn exponentially more about the world around you? Like one of my favorite books that I read a few years ago is called The Scent of Desire by Rachel Hers. And it's one of the few books on the psychology of scent. And I learned so many beautiful and incredible and cool things through this book. But I got to better understand myself and my connection to smell, all of our connection to smell, right? And the way that we store memory through our sense of smell, right? And so there's all these beautiful things that start to show up, and it triggered some other things and actually helped me realize something else that became the opening of one of my speeches, right? And whether it's just to better understand yourself or the world around you, or you happen to be somebody who also writes speeches and does public speaking, having all of these different stories that we become aware of, it starts to connect us in different ways, right? Because like through this book, I learned about a whole variety of things that for some, it's why we can't come up with like a universal stink bomb, by the way, is because every different culture holds prized a whole variety of different scents and thinks certain things are stinky as opposed to other things. And so what's stinky to me might be really beautiful smelling and kind of stir beautiful memories and emotions for somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the more we start to understand that, I think the more respectful we can be of one another, right? And so that's the thing, is learning and education, it helps us to understand how to better respect ourselves and the world around us. So I would say start with curiosity.
Yeah, and that can be said to anything. Like you said, you get a group of people together that help you work with your speech, and they're all of different backgrounds.
Exactly.
But I don't care how many different backgrounds you get to, I'll guarantee you there's always going to be one person out there that either finds it offensive or this, because we all have different perceptions. So like you said, we're not perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. I always say we're going to resonate with who we're going to resonate with.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do the best we can. And that's really all you can ask.
Exactly. That's all you can ask, is that you're being accountable in the world and you're being as respectful as you know how, and continually investing in better understanding how to respect the world around you.
Yeah. So I know we talked a little bit about finding the 3 different things, but can you share some more practical tips on how individuals can infuse their choices with intention to design a more fulfilling life?
Yeah, there are, inside of our homes, we barely ever give ourselves permission to actually fully be ourselves, especially for women or femme presenting people or people raised as women in the world. It's really difficult to give yourself permission to not have your home set up in a way that is meant to be pleasant for guests. Right?
Right.
And I want to challenge that. And I think it's a really big step in becoming a more intentional person, is being intentional inside of your own home. One of the things I used to do with clients is walk through their homes with them. And people can do this on their own and see the places where I saw them get very tense, or them try to avoid me seeing them, or like breeze past something. Mm-hmm. And there's zero judgment on my part. Your home is your home. It's either functioning for you or if it's not. And if it's not functioning for you, that's, again, not me. There's no judgment. You just don't know how to make it function for you. And that's okay. Let's figure it out together, right? Or I'll figure it
Right.
out for you if you want me to. But really, I still need your input. I don't know how to think, and I don't know how you live your life. I need you to share that with me. So what I have people do is just walk through your home. If you do your normal walking path, how you wish you could navigate and move through your home. And if there's barriers in place, can they be moved? Can they be removed? Can you swap out a piece of furniture for something smaller that allows you to establish a more natural walking path? Because there's all these barriers for ourselves inside of our own home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're okay with those barriers being there, right? And we're holding more space for them than our own selves inside of our home, right?
Right.
There's a problem, right? And, I'm not saying you have to buy something new. You could do like a furniture consignment shop or a secondhand place or something like that, and swap things out, right? There are ways that you could do things on a budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
But start giving yourself permission. Or if there's furniture or pieces of things, gifts from people that you're holding on to because you feel bad getting rid of them, give them away, please, or sell them. It doesn't matter if it's a family heirloom and it's so important to the family for it to be kept. Well, then somebody else in the family can keep it. And if no one else in the family wants to keep it, then that tells you just how important it actually is. And please give yourself permission to sell it or throw it out, right?
Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah.
Right. So these are the processes that we can start to go through in ourselves, inside of our homes, inside of our own lives. Where are we not giving ourselves permission? And start there, because the more we start to give ourselves permission, the kinder we show up in the world, the more intentional we show up in the world, right? Because I find that the less permission I give myself, the less permission I want to extend to others.
Yeah. And like you said, if you're walking around and accepting all the barriers in your home, then what barriers are you accepting in your life or in your business or what you're doing? Because it's going to flow over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very good point. Another thing I don't think we often think of, we don't correlate them. I mean, a lot of people try to say work is work, home is home.
They're not. They all live inside of you. They are not separate. They all live inside of you. Yeah.
So how do you maintain a sense of balance and well-being when you're navigating the challenges of leadership and personal growth?
The short answer, sometimes I don't.
I think we all get there sometimes. Yeah.
I am human, so I'm not going to pretend that I succeed at it. I do the work that I do because I needed it, right? It was 10 years of research for myself that I just that I inevitably started sharing with the world, kind of was thrust out of me, really. It just got so full inside of me, right? So I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it all out. But I do find ways to get back to balance, right? As best as I can. For a long walk when it's not 100 degrees outside. I look to just physically be active and make sure I'm present inside of my own body so that I can feel what I need to feel in order to adjust what I need to adjust, right? Or sometimes I just need to feel it.
Right.
So I find the balance in just being present and doing what I can to practice being more present, whether that be in a curiosity walk or meditation. Meditation has really helped me to be present during a curiosity walk, right? So all of these things, again, build on each other. So for me, it's a balance. There'll be sections of the year in which I'm reading like 2 or 3 books a week, and sections of the year where I'm reading like 1 book a month, right? Because there's times when I really want to learn and I'm looking, my brain is searching for something. And then when I find it, it's like, okay, now I can process and create something and move through that learning. And then I can go through another cycle of learning, right? So there's these cycles, and I've just come to honor the cycles instead of holding myself to this regimented place, because all of nature lives in a cycle, right?
Yeah.
We seem obsessed with showing up exactly the same way every single day. Hustle culture, We'll go hard every day. Go hard, play hard, work hard. What if I just want to be relaxed?
Yeah.
What if I want to work soft? Right? What if I don't want to work relaxed? What if I want to give my brain a break? What if I just want to be human for a day? What if I don't base my value and my worth off of what I produce today? What if I just let myself watch that docuseries on Netflix? And so it's about a balance. It's about a balance.
Yeah. And those are good points. For one, even though we're talking about mindfulness or being positive, and generally we'll show up here, happy and everything, that doesn't mean life is always that way for us. Like you said, there is that balance.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And even in the tough times, I know that, something, I'm going to learn something in those tough times. I'm not going to see it while I'm in the tough time. And I don't make myself responsible to see it in the tough time, but I do see it on the other end, right? I just let myself sometimes be present with the tough time and ask for the help that I need, right? So that I can get through that tough time supported the way that I need to.
Yeah. And so like you said, we all have those tough times, that we have to get out of. When you find yourself in that time, is that normally what you do, is the meditation, curiosity walks, or do you find yourself that you don't stay in those tough times as long as you used to?
I try to approach it without judgment. I try. I do my best. I don't usually succeed, but I do my best. I find that I approach the tough times differently. It's not that the length or duration is any different, because the world is unpredictable and I have no control over it. So that tough time may be something, and often is something, that's entirely outside of my control. Because if it was inside of my control, I wouldn't want to experience the tough time. I would have avoided it entirely, right? And so I think my curiosity has gotten to a place where I'm like, okay, if I approach this tough time with curiosity instead of judgment and anger and frustration, it doesn't mean that anger and frustration don't come into it. But if I give myself permission to just be curious throughout that moment, how can I pivot myself and my business, how I'm showing up in the world, the way that I'm marketing, whatever it is, right? Instead of being like, well, this worked in the past, so it should work now.
Right.
What if I just let it go? What if I just let it go? What if I just realize that that thing had a moment and in my life, and it doesn't have a place or a moment anymore, or it needs to be adjusted or whatever it is. And then I adjust and move forward. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's how you succeed, is by recognizing, okay, the tough time is here. Something was working, but it's not working now. Or maybe it never worked and I thought it was working and I was trying to make it work. Right. And I make the adjustments and I learn and I move forward, because ultimately you succeed because of how you pivot, not how determined you are to be right.
Yeah, you don't always have to be right. There's more than one way.
You really never have to be right.
Right.
Really.
Exactly.
It's just, if we stayed in a place of curiosity, it's like, well, this is what I know now, and what I know tomorrow and in the next moment will be different because I'll know more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what are your aspirations for continuing to spread the message of intentional living and ethical leadership in the future?
All right. Honest answers here only. I am working very hard to get on the TEDx stage. May, I presented a pitch to one of the organizers, so maybe happening sometime in the next year, to continue to get on, more incredible stages. I'm going to pitch one of my workbooks for South by Southwest at the end of this year. So really just continue to build the brand and share the message. I mean, ultimately, I wish I didn't have to get on those stages to be able to gain better awareness and share the message any further, but it's kind of a rite of passage. And so that's where those are where my sights are aimed. And to, as far as myself personally and growing the brand. But, being able to just talk to people and share with people, and, even my workshops through my website, a good number of people take them every month. And the way that people come to me after and they're like, wow, that workshop is still sitting with me and it's 3 weeks later. It shifted everything. Or they'll listen to a podcast episode and they'll be like, and I'll get emails, right? And I'm always thrilled when I do, that someone says, you changed the way I viewed so much of my life, or my entire life. And I'm like, great. I love that. Right. And so for me, it's just about being able to share the message, find the places and the people who are also interested in learning and being more intentional and being more ethical and being more powerful and joyful in the world, and getting on those stages.
Yeah. Now you mentioned workbook, and I know you do speaking, but
Yeah.
have you written a book, or have you thought about writing a book
Yeah.
about your story and the message?
Yeah. So each of my workshops has a workbook with it. So I have written many workbooks. And I think I meant to say workshop rather than workbook, but whatever. But yes, I wrote a romance novel under a pen name, I don't know, 2.5 years ago now. So that was fun. And I wanted to write nonfiction first. So I kind of understood the process and how I would behave in writing something. But I have started writing my book about my story of how I got from where I grew up to now, and my thoughts on leadership and relationship. And so that's a process. It takes time.
Oh, yeah.
When you're also writing speeches and creating workshops and consulting with organizations, those paid opportunities, they come first.
Yep.
Paying clients always come first. So the book, I imagine will probably, continue. I had given myself like, okay, we're going to have it done by June of 2024. And here we are in June of 2024, and it's not even remotely close. And that's okay with me. It's now kind of a place of, okay, can I write a little bit here and there, and maybe it'll be finished by 2025 or something. So yes, there's a book in the works, and I have a working title. I'm calling it How I Became Human. So yeah, there's stuff in the works, just gonna take a little time.
I just had to ask, because that is an amazing, journey to be able to go through all that, come out on the other side. And I believe there's probably others out there that can relate to, some of the things that you've gone through, and you would truly be an inspiration, I believe, for them to help get them to the other side.
Yeah, no, it's definitely in the works.
We have a couple of minutes left. So what is the best way people should get a hold of you or connect with you? And what would you like to leave the audience with today?
Okay, best way to connect with me is through my website. You can also scan this QR code here that Laura has up on the screen. I'm sure everything will be tagged in the show notes, but you can check out my website. It's www.concinnate.world. Concinnate is CONCINNATE.world. There is my speaker page there. There's my workshops available, my services, all that information, and the best way to connect with me. You can also subscribe to my email blast. So everything's there. And then what do I wish people to take away with them? I think I know how much my life has changed, and all the people I have become along the way. And I can't even begin to fathom who I might become in the next 5, 10, 15 years, given this growth track that I've been on. But we are capable of so much more than we have been empowered to understand. And I hope you spend the rest of your life being curious enough to learn vast amounts of things about the world, and in so doing, learn incredible things about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, because you truly are an inspiration, and you're most definitely Resilience Redefined.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for spending the time with us and sharing your story and your journey with us. For whoever this resonates with, I hope you take the time to reach out. Like Shana says, would love to hear from you. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you